We're going to go to the next panel where we're going to really talk about the lessons from Asia, from companies that have actually worked, done business in Asia and have done business in emerging markets. Please welcome to the panel, we have Bobby Healy, CTO from CarTrawler. We have Cuthbert, Chairman from Roundtable. We have Stephan Ekbergh, CEO from Travelstart, and Shibata, CEO Venture Republic. Gentlemen, I'll sit here. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good. All right, so let's play some music to start, right? You know, because I'm feeling really, really cold, and I think we need to dance. So I asked each of the panelists to pick a song that they felt best encapsulated their idea of Asia. And so let's start with Cuthbert's choice. DJ, that wasn't your song. It's coming.
I got your picture, I got your picture. I'd like 1 million of you over myself. I want a doctor to take a picture so I can look at you from
Okay, Rod.
You must know.
That was called Turning Japanese. Tell us the rationale for that choice.
Japan's just such a wonderful place to visit. It's just culturally so different. And when you go there, you feel as though you want to become a part of the vibe. Okay. I also like one-hit wonder bands, and that was one of them.
All right, okay. So let's go to Stephan's choice.
Then walk luck and you looked in time. Never looked back, walk tall, act fine.
Good choice, right?
Obvious choice. Obvious choice.
All right, so Stephan, talk to us about that choice. Golden Years, David Bowie.
So, yeah, well, you know, when you ask one song, I couldn't pick one song, so I thought about an artist. So I thought David Bowie, for me, you know, pictures Asia very, very well because, you know, as long as he was alive, he constantly changed. He was always on the cutting edge and, you know, went with the times. He actually defined the times, I would say, to some degree. And so that's why I chose David Bowie. So if you look at, you know, if I would have an artist for Europe, I would say Rolling Stones. Still stuck in the same old rut as, you know, ever, you know, never changing, you know, but never dying either, you know, so.
All right, okay. So let's go to Bobby.
Come on.
So Bobby had obviously to pick an Irish band.
Yes.
Come on.
Well, because I'm debating against the Asian Tigers later on.
Good luck.
I had to prove a point that no innovation or culture comes from the East. So I chose an Irish song.
And the Irish song is Where the Streets Have No Name.
Correct, yeah. I can't understand a single thing when I go to the East. And it's
But I think it works for North Korea, though.
lost.
I think the streets have no names there, right?
That's why you always lost. Okay, let's go to Kay's choice.
You guys don't know.
Okay, Kay, what the hell are they singing about?
They were
This is
singing.
the band name Baby Metal. It's a young female heavy metal band, and then it's a really kind of symbol of a new, you know, like young Japanese, especially, you know, the females. You know, they're actually kind of breaking the kind of box now. So the young Japanese actually are changing now, and then they are more international, and then especially female. So this is a great symbol of the song in Asia, I think.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's for the songs. Then I also asked you to give me a number or a fact, and we had lots of that from Philip just now. So something about Asia that made you sit up and pay attention that you've learned recently. So let's start with you, Rod.
Yeah, as a questioner, you've sort of got a heart of stone. I think you're always coming up with ridiculous challenges for us to
I
to
agree
meet.
with
You're calling me heartless?
Yes. So the number I came up with was 1.2 billion, which was the number of annual high-speed rail passengers in China and Japan, which is half of all the passengers in the world. You know, Europe tends to think of itself as the center of the high-speed rail marketplace, but it's really Asia, and China's building out its high-speed rail network faster than anybody. So I think it's a stunning number.
Stephan?
Well, so since I do business in Africa, I thought, I wanted to tie that in a little bit there.
Sure.
And obviously, Naspers is, one of those, tech giants that we often tend to forget. And if I'm not completely wrong here, they made an investment into, a small startup called Tencent, a few years back, and I think the investment was around $40 million. Around that, and at the time they were given, around 40% or something like that for Tencent. I still think that they have around 30% plus of the company.
Wow.
And how many billions, they're worth today, I don't know, but it's a staggering number, and I think it gives me, doing business in Africa, kind of hope. I'm also hoping to be able to do that bet one day.
To pick the next Tencent. Okay.
Yeah.
Kay, what about you?
Well, we already talked a lot about the messenger apps this morning, but I definitely wanted to emphasize that the combined number of users using WeChat, Line, and Kakao is 1.3 billion now. So there's a clear shift of the platform, from to messenger app now. And then what's most important actually is any one of them, WeChat, Kakao, Line, they are getting into the travel.
Yeah.
Big time. So that's actually the fundamental difference from Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp.
All right. So that's interesting. So 1.3 billion very active users, WeChat, Line, and Kakao, and 1.2 billion passengers on high-speed rail, China and Japan alone. I mean, the numbers. What's your number? What's the number?
So my number is 99.
Okay.
Because that's the name of the Brazilian taxi operator that Didi bought recently. And the reason I find that interesting is a number of reasons. One is that it's a big signal from a Chinese giant that they have world ambitions. And it's also, I think it's the model for Chinese to expand internationally in that they're going to acquire, they're not going to build or modify a product to expand. And I think it's also a really interesting signal versus Uber, because there was supposedly a truce in China, and it seems like that's not the case. So I think the next couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, is going to be super interesting about how China deploys capital, in what form and in which sectors.
Right. So I mean, that's interesting, because the next question is about ground transportation, which is, so we're now going to go into the sectors that you're in. So ground transportation, I mean, Grab bought the entire Uber Southeast Asia business.
Yeah.
So there's only now Grab in Southeast Asia, right? So for you, what makes ground transportation interesting for you in Asia? Which markets are you succeeding in?
It's funny because we started with a car rental business, which is predominantly European business, and it points to just consumer behavior. Nobody rents cars in Southeast Asia. I mean, some people do, but the penetration is 1/10 of what it is. So for us, what ground transportation simply means is, providing all relevant means of ground transportation. A customer on a 7-day holiday travels 250 to 350 kilometers in ground transportation. So, ride-hailing is not necessarily a relevant product for them, and cost per mile traveled versus, rental or versus whatever other products you might sell are very different. So I think it's not a fait accompli that the world moves to ride-hailing, particularly in the leisure sector, particularly when I look at our customers that are airlines, it's different. So, we see it as all opportunity. In Southeast Asia, it's absolutely a ground transportation market.
So which market are you winning the most in right now?
Korea is probably our...
Okay, and which market are you failing miserably at? China, okay.
Yeah.
Rod, let's go to rail. I mean, we talk about 1.2 billion passengers. What are you doing about it? What is Rome to Rio doing about the rail opportunity in Asia?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that for, a non-Asian company thinking about the size and complexity of the Asian markets, it's enough to give you your 19th nervous breakdown. It's just so big, it's so hard, and you want to be in there, but the first thing you know is that you don't know a lot about it because the market is so different. So we have not done a lot, frankly, in Asia yet we've managed to generate about 20% of our traffic from the Asian marketplace, because we've discovered, particularly in China, that people who are looking to travel in Europe as a free and independent traveller, and already 40% of Chinese travellers going overseas are FIT travellers. Even if they have English language skills, they don't like to visit a lot of sites. So if they can visit one site, like Rome to Rio, and find a lot of information, that's a real boon for them. So
the fact that you actually have really strong Europe content has worked well for the Asia market.
yeah, we haven't had to do a lot yet. They've
Yeah.
found us, so that's good so far.
All right. So let's go to Kay, and earlier panel talked about private accommodation. So for the first time, I think the Japanese government said that 12% of foreign visitors going to Japan now use private accommodation, right? So where do you see that going, and what are you doing about that opportunity?
Well, you know, this space probably makes me most exciting, and then you're right. I think there's a very interesting set of numbers I heard. Right, according to Airbnb, well, Tokyo is the most popular, destination among their users, and then Osaka came third. So, I mean, among all those cities in the world, right? This is pretty amazing. But at the same time, only 0.3% of Japanese travelers actually have used Airbnb last year. That means, we see tremendous opportunity, right? Both inbound and domestic, and then perhaps the outbound too. So, this is like year one. I mean, still year one, but you see Tokyo, a bunch of inbound tourists, and then most of them is actually using private accommodation, as you just described.
Yeah.
But none of the Japanese actually using. So that's. Can you imagine how
much
opportunities?
how much uptake
there,
that will be? Yeah, that's interesting. So now, Stephan, I mean, people are probably going to ask, Africa, what are you doing on a panel about Asia? But actually, there's lots of ties between Asia and Africa. And you've been coming to WIT, you've seen the evolution of online travel in Asia, and you operate within Africa. Any parallels you draw between the two?
Well, I mean, I think that, there are probably a lot of, so I've been thinking a lot about that question, actually. So it's interesting. Both continents had, foreign rulers once upon a time. And you can see that, the road that they took were quite different, and while Asia is always looking extremely much forward, Africa is very much stuck in the past, and even if the rulers are gone, they're still haunting their memories, and so leaving the past behind is very, very important. But I think that what I've learned is that leapfrogging is a big part of Asia's story, and I see that a lot in Africa as well. So everything a lot. If we look, for instance, in the payment space, M-Pesa, for instance, in Kenya was very, very successful early. In South Africa today, you can pay with mobile phones almost everywhere, and that's just amazing. Another thing is the long tail accommodation side, which is I find super interesting. I wish I could tell you, how much accommodation is not automated or is not online in Africa yet, but I don't know. But it's a lot, and so we find that's an interesting space.
So your company just made an acquisition in the long tail accommodation sector,
yeah,
right?
So we made an investment in that space, and it's growing phenomenally, and we see that there is more and more angles to that business that we can add, as payments and stuff like that, which is super interesting, because Africa is really it's so behind in so many ways that there is a whole ecosystem, even if I hate that word because everybody uses it, but there's a whole ecosystem that needs to be built, and that's quite exciting actually to be in the middle of that.
Okay.
Plus another thing that we mustn't forget that India is the main investor into African infrastructure today, all over the place. So
Right.
Yeah.
I love what Andrea said earlier. I mean, Andrea is your investor, right? So he invested $50 million in you, and he said that ASEAN is the new India. I really like what he said. So now, Rod, going back to your Viator founder hat, right? the pioneer in tours and activities. So lots of money coming into, and you've seen a lot of players come up in Asia. So lots of players coming up in Asia, and then Western brands expanding in Asia. Who's going to win?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that I wish I was doing a startup in tours and activities in Asia right now, but you can't always get what you want. I would always back the well-funded, well-managed Asian startups against the interlopers from the West because of the complexity and the nuances of the Asian markets. I really like Klook, Veltra, Be My Guest. I think they're really interesting companies doing slightly different things. They know their markets really well. I think that the battleground here in Europe for Expedia, Viator, Get Your Guide, that will keep them busy, just winning market share. They've got a lot of room to move, a lot of room to grow in this market. I think the local Asian brands will do a lot better.
Okay, so what's the magic bullet you think, because everybody talks about how fragmented, and then yes, there's no instant availability and all that. What do you think is the magic bullet in tours and activities that's going to make this space like really go on fire?
I wish I could give you an answer to that, but I don't think there is particularly a magic bullet. I think it's just an incremental thing. Sometimes these things are unplanned. It was the case that after 9/11, which was a shocking event, but it wasn't a bad thing for the online travel industry because the phone systems overheated and everybody went online. So the airlines and other companies responded by doing a lot better of their web systems. People got used to it, and the online travel system, it actually was terrific for it. So it might be something like that.
All right, okay. So now just a quiz. Who said this? The first person to get it right, I will give you a bottle of champagne. The very important thing you should have is patience when doing business in Asia. Who said that?
Jack Ma.
Jack Ma, yeah.
Everybody goes, that's why I owe 4 bottles of champagne. Damn, okay. So,
I don't think Bobby said it, and I'm sure that Bobby doesn't drink champagne.
Bobby lost. Okay.
They cheated.
So we know that patience is really what you need. I mean, we heard from Fritz, right? Talking about, product market fit, execution, and then harvesting. Patience is needed. So other than patience, what else do you think is needed to do business and succeed in Asia?
I think it's important to actually give the autonomy or delegation to the local management.
Okay.
When you look back the history, so one good example in Japan, back in the days when the eBay actually came to Japan and they failed miserably. So what they did was actually they control everything, all the operations, management, everything from our US. However, the opposite example was Yahoo Japan. Yahoo Japan was a totally independent run. Of course, with a big influence by Masayoshi Son of SoftBank. I think, he owned the share, which is actually a very big deal, I think.
Okay.
But I think it's, but the bottom line is actually back in the days, we talk about no cowboy hats in Asia.
No cowboy hats.
No cowboy hats in Asia. It never works.
Okay.
So.
All right, so no autonomy to local management?
Yeah, but I think that's, you kind of said it all there, really. It's about local management, having the power. But in order to have local management running a business, you need local investment, you need local owners. And I think that, no amount of effort, like I know that I need Chinese people to run my business in China, but, as a European, I don't have that network. I don't have that ability to find those people, and I don't have that ability to even understand them or understand the market. So I look at myself, my business as an investor in China, not as a business in China, and I'm not well placed to do that. So I need an investment partner to do that with. So SoftBank in the case of China.
Right, you're talking about the joint venture
partner.
So.
Rod?
Yeah, China is such, or the Asian markets are such a tremendous opportunity that I think one of the key things you need to have is persistence. You've got to be careful to not fade away. You've got to be sort of on the radar and spend a lot of money and a lot of time to be successful there.
Okay. And Stephan, what about in Africa?
Yeah, so I thought about this, as we were speaking here, and coming from Sweden originally, the whole, what makes you successful there is so different from what would make you successful in Asia, and I think one of the things that you need more than, for instance, in Sweden or Scandinavia, is actually to have a lot of guts. And because that's, when I meet some of the, the founders in Asia and the CEOs, my gosh, they're so gutsy, and I sometimes wonder where the hell do they get this from? But I think to a certain degree, we are, in the Scandinavian countries, we were brought up with this sort of Lutheran, false humility, and which you obviously don't have in Asia, So
what do you mean?
So,
we are very humble people.
I was talking about false humility, But anyway, so I think have a lot of guts. That is super important.
All right. So now we got to race through the last bit of questions. So very short answers, Bobby, if possible. One mistake made, and lesson learned from that.
Sold too late in my last business.
Sold too late in your last business.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm always telling people who get into the travel business because they have done a lot of travel that's probably not a good grounding. And I got into the news business because I read the newspaper a lot. It was an awful success. It was just awful failure.
Stephan?
So I would say trusting that money will solve any problem. That's very stupid.
All right. Okay.
I think in our case, in my case, so we made the decision to become a public company too fast.
Okay.
Well, it was actually beyond our control because the management team actually didn't have the control shares. But looking back, that was a painful mistake, I think.
All right. So, well, you're still here. So now one word answer for the rest of the questions. The Asia homegrown travel brand I am watching.
Klook.
Klook.
Still Sea-Trip for me.
Sea-Trip.
Yeah, I would say Sea-Trip as well.
Sea-Trip.
Traveloka.
Traveloka, okay.
Good one.
The global Western company that I think is doing the best job expanding across Asia. Other than CarTrawler. Bobby.
I was going to say CarTrawler, yeah. Uber.
Uber.
Wild horses wouldn't get me to say CarTrawler, but
No.
I would say Agoda Booking.com because of Agoda.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to be contrarian here. Louis Vuitton.
Okay. It's true. They sell a hell of them handbags.
Then I have to say Netflix. No, kidding. And so I mean Airbnb in our space
Okay.
for sure because they built the tremendous brand equity. Not in Japan so far, but places like South Korea, even China, Singapore,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So across the Asia, so almost everyone actually knows Airbnb now.
Okay. So if you were investing, what's the sector that you want to invest in Asia?
Computer vision, anything with computer vision associated.
Computer vision?
Yeah, all sectors.
All sectors?
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning?
I was in Hong Kong, out my window, as an exercise, I counted 812 air conditioning units, just looking straight out my window.
It's true.
On the
yeah.
outside of buildings.
Yeah, and they've had cases where the air conditioning have fallen on people. So it's really dangerous as well. So air conditioning, okay?
So something that fixes air pollution.
Air pollution, okay?
I would have to say the content, especially videos. So
Videos.
yes.
You're going to buy YouTube.
Hope
No,
so.
I mean not videos, okay? All right, one myth that I'd like to shatter about Asia.
They're not that good. that goes into my debate thing in a few
Okay,
minutes.
yeah, you're sort of preparing for the debate,
Yeah,
right?
they can't innovate.
I can see that you're really
So
nervous.
Peter Thiel wrote a book called 0 to 1, and you can read that, but they fail to innovate.
Okay.
I have no expectations that people will take this answer to heart, but that there is a thing called Asia, because there's so many different countries that are all so very different. Their cultures are so different, and doing well in Japan guarantees you nothing for Korea or China or Malaysia.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think, I don't have a good answer to that, actually, so I'll pass to Kay.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's that humility you were talking about.
Yeah,
He's
That's the false,
demonstrated
is it
live.
false humility?
But it's
No,
false.
it's real. It's real.
Okay.
I would have to say, the fast mover advantage. People talk about fast mover, right? It's important to become first mover, but back in our history. So when we came into the business 17 years ago, there are like more than a few really powerful competitors around. But after 17 years, so we actually became the number one in the meta search space in Japan. So clearly, there's no first move advantage. Like, look at our social media space too, like a Cyward, remember? So they are first movers on Facebook, but that they actually, they are not able to actually.
Okay, so
win the
being
market
first
share.
doesn't mean that you're going to be
Right.
All right. Okay.
But
So
it's first to do it right. It's first to do it right.
First
the
to do it
first
right.
to do it right and fast. Okay. So books. We all love books. Is your strongest weapons. Name a book that gave you unexpected insight into Asia or culture, anything that helped you. A book.
Well, so it's what I said there, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel.
0 to 1.
Yeah, he just encapsulates exactly how I think about it, about the innovation and the way it goes from west to east and the lack of when you get there, and that ultimately over the very long term, like you're talking the century term, that cultural dearth of innovation will cause Asia to fail.
All right.
Upcoming debate.
Upcoming.
You ready,
debate again.
Blanca?
But you heard the investors, and they were saying that whatever they're
investors
watching
are
is the
short-term.
innovation are coming into.
So this is about culture, right? So investors are short-term thinking, right? They're maximum 10 years, so that's all fine.
Okay, you're talking centuries now. Okay, all right, Rod.
Well, you're probably mean non-fiction books, so I can't give you any
I don't know. It could be fiction.
Okay, so I can give you some satisfaction on that. Anything at all by Murakami. Doesn't really help you in business, but it's a lot of fun to read.
Okay, and it helps you turn Japanese.
It
I
does.
really think
No,
so.
I like him a lot as well. Yeah, he's really good.
All right, Stephan?
So Asian book, I was really struggling with that. But 7 years in Tibet was a really good book. I'll tell you, it changed my life. I read it when I was a teenager. But one book, for this context, I would say, and I think I mentioned this a couple of years ago on another panel with you, was a book about Tetra Pak. And it had a tremendous impact on me because Swedish company, doing milk packaging, wasn't going anywhere in the Western world, and they focused all their attention on Africa and Asia, and of course have had a tremendous impact on people's lives. So
Okay. Okay.
This is a very old book I read when I was a kid. It's called Child of Ours by this author named Toyoko Yamazaki. This book is about the Japanese World War II orphan, left in China. And then, he got the discriminations and everything. And then, but, his Chinese father actually raised him very wisely. So it's a very moving story. I cry a lot.
Oh, wow.
But, it actually symbolizes like a lot of complexities in this region, like, the history too. History included, like China, Japan, South Korea, also the Southeast Asia too. So this is actually really kind of symbolize like a diversity of of the regions, and then also the dynamics too. So
Fantastic. Please join me in thanking my panelists, Kay, Stephan, Rod, and Bobby. Now, Bobby, you stay on stage. All right.